So when you come back to inspect this, you always start at an outside frame, because very rarely is the queen ever going to be to the outside of the box. I would say that when these bees have built out this frame that we put in there that's empty, and they've got comb about halfway down both of these other frames, that you should add the next box.
Okay, and do we add that box then on top of or beneath?
Right on top of this one. So because they typically will build up into it. Some people do what's called under-supering. Some people will put if it's 2 boxes high, they'll stick the empty in the middle, which doesn't make much sense to me. But I always put them on, I always stack them, and they'll build right up into it. In the spring, they're typically in the top of the box, and you will reverse the boxes then if there's only brood in the top box.
Okay.
That all makes sense?
As of right now, as much as it can.
Okay. So now we've got, there are some dead brood in here due to the fact that I was in there the other day and I probably hit some of the frames together. And so they would typically haul this out, and we're just gonna dump it out. And then there's still the queen pheromone inside this box. And so you'll see that there's still a number of bees in there.
Yep.
And so normally these would come in a cardboard box.
Right.
And but I use wooden boxes, and then I will typically transfer it to a cardboard box, but these were ready to go, and it was easier just to bring them today the way they were.
So we'll
get these bees out of here. Sometimes there's not a lot of them in there, so I'm just going to do it right here on the side.
So that won't smush them on top then?
No, it's got space.
Okay.
So this is equally spaced. Some of them have a thinner space on one side and a thicker space on the other side. In the summer, you would want the thicker space down. In the winter, you'd want the thinner space down. But this one's equal, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm gonna take this box and just go like this.
One way to do it.
And get the bees out of it. And then I'll close this back up. Because that pheromone is still in here, if they smell it, they're going to go to it. So I'm going to move it away over here. And then they'll find this box real quick. So we'll put the lid on it, and you have a bee colony.
Woohoo! The first of many. So how comfortable are you feeling, Alyssa?
It's actually kind of calming hearing the buzzing. You just kind of
Nice,
get in the mode of...
So the other thing I do, especially when I'm out here in the wild like this, is I typically will put a rock on top of this box so that when the wind comes up real hard and heavy, it doesn't blow the lid off of it.
Well, let me go grab one. Here, let's you want to hold this? Right
And
there.
then how often do we come out to check on the bees?
Actually, I'm going to probably want to come out and check them in about 2 weeks
2 weeks.
and just see how they're doing.
So we wait for 2 weeks to come? Okay.
Yeah, just let them do their thing.
All right.
They'll be fine. They're already basically, if you stand back a little bit, you can see that the bees that are out here are actually doing circles. They know where the box is already, so they're coming out here and they're doing circles, and that's giving them their location. They're GPSing this box.
Wow.
And then within just an hour to 2 hours, they'll be foraging out here on all the flowering plants and whatever you can get. They got a lot of bitter brush right now, which is good. They'll be getting the bitter brush, and they will fly as far as 7 miles. So the little housing development down there, which is probably 2 miles away at the most, they'll be down there in all the neighbors' yards and nectar out of the flowers down there and the fruit trees and things like that.
Awesome. So they'll come visit our garden.
They'll do that too.
Yay.
All right. Something like one of these.
Yeah, there you go. All right, any questions?
As far as people walking by, we don't really need to worry about that, right? I mean, they aren't going to bug us if we decide to go walk along trails or nearby here.
No. And I think probably the elk will go around it too.
That makes good sense. As far, we put ours up on a stand because we wanted to have easier access to it.
All of them should be on stands.
They should all be on stands. So you never want to put a hive just straight on the ground.
No, they don't really care for that. That's why when you see them in juniper trees, they're usually up wherever the hollow is. They find a hollow that's far off the ground, 10 to 12 feet. So there's actually a lady in the valley right now that is doing tree hives.
Tree hives?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
that's
she's
neat.
got them on a pulley system where she can raise it up the side of a tree so it's 10 to 12 feet off the ground. And just an experiment to see how well they thrive at that elevation. But typically in the wild, you're never going to find a bee colony that's
On the ground.
close. The opening is close to the ground.
Perfect.
Unless it's the only place they can go. Also, you have this inspection board too,
Okay, so let's look at
which
this.
I want you to, we can just leave it till I get back. But if you do happen to come out here, and once the bees get established and everything, you can walk up behind the hive without anything on, and just pull this out and look at it. And what I want you to look for are little brown circles that are varroa mites.
Okay.
And you can Google that and get a good picture of a varroa mite.
Okay.
And if you see any of those on this, you definitely need to let me know, because they all the bees pretty much have them anymore, and we want to medicate them for that as soon as possible if we see them.
Okay. So then, medicating them, is that going to affect the honey at all?
Depending on what time of year, no. I use formic acid, which doesn't affect the honey. The Apiguard, which I usually will do in the early spring, does affect the honey, but you're never going to get to the honey before fall. So by then they've already eaten everything that is affected, and you don't have your super on or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about it.
What about, obviously bees are animals, and I know pesticides do work on them.
Yep.
We have other farmers around, and we have a neighborhood full of people who have little gardens that may use that type of thing. Do we need to worry about that affecting the colony?
Yes.
We do.
Yep. If your neighbor sprays their apple tree while it's in bloom and the bees go collect from it, it can be very devastating to your population.
So it could, even just a couple of bees going and getting it. Of course, probably not just a couple of bees would get it then, right?
No, once they find a source of food, they come back and tell everybody that it's there, and then you'll have a lot of foragers going to that location.
Gotcha. So that's why it's good, with having the bitter brush blooming right now real close. That's really good to keep them healthy.
Yep. Right now, yeah, they're going to be all over the bitter brush.
And then, obviously you just said we could walk behind it without a suit.
Yep.
When do you know when you need to actually use a bee suit and when you don't? Because you see people in bee suits, not in bee suits, all over the internet saying, oh no, you don't need them, they aren't going to hurt you, just deal with a sting or two every once in a while.
Yeah, well, a lot of those YouTube videos and stuff like that, they've come in with a smoker and they have smoked the bees to the point to where they're very docile. And I've showed my students that if you take your bee smoker and you smoke these bees until they're inundated with smoke, you don't need a bee suit.
Gotcha.
Because they're going to be so...
They're basically drugged out at that point then, right? So they don't care about anything.
They just can't,
Do they still fly when they're smoked?
Not if they're... Yeah, they will. They'll fly all the time, but the smoke just kind of, really knocks them down, you might say. Basically, they engorge themselves with honey when you give them smoke, so that they think maybe their hive might be on fire. And so they're going to fill up on honey in case the whole colony has to move. They're taking their supplies with them. So a lot of people just use sugar water spray bottle. when they expect their colonies. So you spray your bees with sugar water, and the other bees start cleaning those off, and they store that sugar water. So that's a nicer way to deal with your bees when you go to inspect them. The sugar water doesn't always work if you have a colony that gets upset. Make a mistake, drop a frame, move too fast. If you kill one accidentally, there's a pheromone that is released that kind of lets them know that there's invaders inside. So just when you want to try not to kill any, obviously it's pretty tough to do. If you move slow enough and methodically, then you can get away with maybe injuring a couple, but maybe not killing them.
Okay.
A lot of it just depends on how you work with your bees, and how conscientious you are about being careful not to pinch bees when you pick up the frames, and you always make sure you have enough space between frames. That's why you always take an outside frame off first, and that gives you that space to pull a frame back, and as you lift it out, you're not rolling bees across each other.
Okay.
Give yourself some room.
That makes sense. And then, as far as moving the hive, is there ever a reason to move this hive if we decide we wanted to angle it a little different, or we wanted to move it, say, over back on the other side of this old burn pile? Do you want to move hives a lot or not a lot?
No, you want to leave them where they're at. The rule of thumb is 2 feet or 2 miles.
2 feet or 2 miles?
Yeah, so if you want to move it, you could move it 2 feet a day, and they would still be there. But if you moved it, say, from here to the other side of the burn pile, your foraging bees are going to come back to this location, and they may or may not find that over there. A certain amount of them will. You might have a certain amount of them just sit on the ground here overnight and die.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because they expect the hive to be at this specific
That's what they're doing right now. They're locating this beehive, and they expect their home to be here when they come back. You can see the little guys fanning. They're starting to do their fanning. That means that they know this is home.
So fanning means they know they're home?
Yeah, it's kind of a way of accepting the area, When you get a swarm of bees and you put them in a box, a lot of them will sit outside and fan.
Let's see. Actually, I'm going to stop.
Always want to work your bees from the back.
Always want to work your bees from the back?
Yeah.
And that's what that fanning is saying, this is home.
They also will do it if the hive gets too hot. You'll have a lot of them out here fanning to create circulation inside the colony. So when we start hitting 90 degrees, of course they've got lots of space, so there may be a few in there, but that start fanning.
So when you work with your bees, do you usually sugar water or smoke, or you just
I usually don't
work
use
with them?
anything unless I have to.
Yeah.
I try not to smoke them, and I try not to spray them with sugar water.
Yeah.
If they get aggressive, then I will resort to one of those methods. But I typically don't use anything on my bees unless I'm, make a mistake and they get pissy with me.
So you keep it with you just
Oh, yeah,
in
it's
case?
in the truck.
Okay. Wow.
And right after this last rainstorm, this week of rain, even though the very next day was nice and 65 degrees, every one of my beehives I opened was certainly a little aggressive.
Oh, here, let's.
And I just went ahead and worked them anyway and let them go.
Well, we appreciate you coming out and helping us. If people wanted to get in contact with you to get bees, or if they're having trouble with swarms and they're here in Central Oregon, how would they get a hold of you?
They can call me at 541-410-2067. And I have a website that's going to be going up pretty soon for Tumalo Bee Academy. And we do have classes year-round, 11 months out of the year for the indoor classes. And then during the summer months, around 20 outdoor field classes such as this.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for helping us get set up. This is Jet and Alyssa with Pancake Farms, where breakfast is just the start. Honey's coming soon.